somebody say something about don't miss it.
Oh, I can't.
Be there.
Listen, be there because tonight it was on fire. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in to another episode of a Wild Time podcast. And I have to say thank you so much for all the subscriptions, all the likes. Check out the past episodes. Before we get into this, got to give Bo's Tractor Works, as you can see, the Appalachian Hills 11, the best CBD cream in the business. I couldn't get my workouts in. I couldn't wrestle and recover if I didn't have this product. Bo's Tractor Works. Make sure that you get up with him, Facebook, and he will take care of you. This next guest, I'm extremely, extremely excited to have on. You can go back in my previous episodes. I've started something with some of my heroes, professional wrestling heroes that I've been blessed and fortunate enough to get to talk to their children. You can go back and check out the first one with my hero, Ravishing Rick Rude. I had Rick Rude Jr. on. Awesome interview. He's doing some great things right now in the bodybuilding world. Recently, I just had Tegan Osborne on, the daughter of Matthew Bourne, Matt Bourne, Maniac Matt Bourne, Doink the Clown. She is a total sweetheart. But today/tonight, ever how this falls, I have someone special. She is the daughter of one of the greatest professional wrestlers of all time. The ring psychology that this man possessed was second to none. His promos were cold and chilling, and he could end your night with the DDT as quick as you could snap your finger. And not only that, but this man also owned Damien the Snake. I would like everyone to give Brandy the Boa Constrictor Smith a welcome to the show. Brandy, how is it going, sis?
It's going great. I really appreciate you having me on. I'm excited about today. I've seen some of your past shows and they're phenomenal. Really enjoyed the one that you were just talking about with Rick Rude Jr. So thank you.
Oh, you're totally welcome. Rick Rude, which has a lot of history with your father. I'm a professional wrestler myself. I did MMA and boxing in my 20s. I should have got into pro wrestling at a much earlier age because of the success I've had in the tri-state area. It's something that I bled since I was a kid. But, Rude and Jake, I talked to your father a few times at conventions and stuff, and he's told me some downright comical stories about him and Rick Rude. So that was always cool. And if you get a chance, check out Tegan Osborne's interview also from the daughter of Doink the Clown, Matt Bourne. I mean, it was a heck of an episode also.
Right on.
Now, what age? The first question I wanted to get to, actually, when I was thinking about doing this, at what age did you realize that your dad's job wasn't a normal 9-to-5 job? When did you realize, hey, listen, he must be doing something pretty special here?
Immediately. I was probably, I know I was in kindergarten because we were in Louisiana still. It was when he was wrestling there, and we lived in the same general area as Junkyard Dog, as, Andre the Giant for a bit. And really, I recognized my dad's a big guy. He's 6'6", and so I realized that he wasn't like the other dads when he came home from Japan for the first time. And he had, I don't know how many hundreds of stitches in his forehead and had a sling on his arm. And I was like, okay, well, this isn't a normal job, but it actually says on my birth certificate that he's a wrestling referee. So as for his occupation, so I knew pretty quickly.
So that was right. Your dad started out as a referee, right?
Yes, he did.
Man,
yes,
I remember watching his, it was the WWE. I think it was years ago. I think it was one of the DVDs they put out the autobiographies on it. And I remember, he got in, he was a big, tall, slender looking referee with, and that's the way 100, usually about 90 to 95% of the guys start as being a referee.
Right. And he talks about how he was, 18 and really didn't know anything about wrestling. But, my grandfather was a wrestler. And so, I mean, he wrestled under Grizzly Smith, and he was, 7'1". And, as soon as you meet your family, and, I spent quite a bit of time with my grandfather as well. And he had to duck to come in our door, in our house. So it was really, I could tell that I wasn't a normal kid in that way, because I had all these huge men around me, and Jake, starting off as a ref, really showed him how to move, he says, how to get out of the way, get out of the shot, how to make sure that you're doing the right things. And he said he was awful at it, just absolutely terrible at it. And so it took him quite some time to really, learn the business better, and learn how to actually wrestle.
So did you get to go to a lot of the events growing up, or was you kind of kept, home, or did,
Well, especially in Louisiana. So when I was super young, so 5 to 7, I got to go to the matches every Saturday night. I mean, it was a blast. I loved it. I thought it was all real, of course. Not that Jake sold that, because he didn't sell that to me at home.
right?
You know what I'm saying? Like, his dad actually sold that to him at home, like,
Yeah.
told him it was real, and kept kayfabe, I mean, all of it kayfabe, and just really protected things, and also semi-tortured Jake with it,
That's what I was going to say, because it seems like the last thing I watched on it might have been Grizzly or Jake stuff, that Jake was kind of traumatized, man, by him, no selling at the house. I mean, him beat up, worried,
Not only that, but just it was all that, and also the primary other wrestlers, he would talk about, they're after me, they're going to kill me, I mean, really very, very serious situations for a young kid. And
Yeah.
especially when it's your dad, and you're a boy, and you don't know the difference. So he really sold that at home. But Jake was good about not selling at home, but really, he did get injured quite a bit. And as I'm sure from personal experience, it happened.
I can, I was nowhere near the stage of your father or any other of those guys, but, I'd wrestle probably 3 to 4 times a month. And, in a main event, you go 20, 25 minutes and you're bumping all over the place, man. And that goes to another point. I don't want to go off into negativity, but a lot of the perception, growing up, that these wrestlers got on drugs because they like to party, they wanted to do this. But the fact of the matter is, until you get in a wrestling ring and you bump your hind end off, back in the day when those guys worked, you didn't get paid unless you went in that ring. That was food on your table. So what did you have to do? You had to take pain medication. And a lot of those guys, guys I looked up to, a lot of my heroes have passed and gone. I mean,
Right.
Brian Pillman, Ravishing Rick Rude, guys like that I, try to, draw influence from. Those guys had Pillman's leg turned 80 degrees in a car wreck, but he had that want to get back in the ring. So it wasn't like a lifestyle of partying for a lot of those guys. It was trying to work. I mean, to pay the bills. And it's such a shame.
Especially when you're doing 2 shows a day often. We went to the Philippines. That was my high school graduation gift, was to get to go to the Philippines with 30 wrestlers. And
Wow.
it was unbelievable. Jake was booking it, did the storylines, everything. So I got to see him up close and personal then. And the guys welcomed me into the locker room like I was one of the guys, even though I was only 17. And it really was a unique experience. And what I really saw is exactly what you're talking about, is they were doing matinee shows and then doing a night show. And they might get 4 or 5 hours of sleep, often because of the pain that they were struggling with. And Jake certainly had his own demons outside of the pain from wrestling. He had some psychological traumas, I'm sure and he had some other things happen in life that really have been pretty awful. And I know people that I worked as a psychologist.
Right.
So literally.
That
So
runs in the family.
it does, right? It does. He wanted to be, he always talks about how he wanted to beat his dad at his own game. Well, I took that from him. Like, oh, you're the ring psychologist? I'll be the real psychologist
There
then,
you go.
So I don't get to practice anymore, but unfortunately for me, I've got some health issues, but it really is pretty fabulous that I took a lot of my persona from Jake as well in psychology and how to just learn how to help people differently. And it came through. I worked for quite some time. I worked for almost 20 years as a psychologist. So, but
that's what my niece is going into right now in college. She was going to start out. My wife's a teacher, but my niece originally started out going to be a teacher, and now she said she wants to be a child psychologist or something like that in the school system to help kids that have. And I'm rooting for her to do that because I think that's a really rewarding job to help anybody get past a lot of stuff that they're dealing with.
And I'm sure you won't be surprised to know that my primary focus was in children and in addiction as well.
Gosh,
so
that is awesome. That is so, because listen to me, every family has that. I mean, somebody in somebody's family has got that problem. It's worse now than ever. I've had it in my family. And, I thank God that I seen so much because one of my brothers, man, was one of the best basketball players in the state, but he was almost like he was a loose cannon. I mean, he just got into stuff at a young age and didn't care about, he could have went to a lot of different colleges and played. And I seen my mom and dad put through so much when I was younger that I kind of made a vow to myself that I'll never put them through that, and here I am, 38-year-old, a pro wrestler. So I never grew up, obviously. So
I think you've enjoyed life and you've focused on the things that are important to you. And what a phenomenal thing to be able to do no matter what the age, right?
Yeah.
So good for you for going and pursuing that. And we've certainly seen wrestlers do it, at any point in life. So I think it's awesome.
Well, there's a guy right now, LA Knight. I think he's like 42 or 43, and he's just now getting over. Just now, last guy I seen do that was, I think, Diamond Dallas Page at probably 36 or 37.
Right.
And I mean, it kind of, obviously the window is here, but you never know what can happen. The good Lord may see fit for you to end up somewhere at any given time. I can't remember who I was listening to. Might have been Tully Blanchard and Arn Anderson when I was working out. I was listening to their podcast, and they were talking about, some of the best breaks come when you're a young guy and you show up to a show and you've got your bag and somebody's got a fever and can't work, and you get to step into that spot, and you get a lucky break.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And Jake, knows that he got some lucky breaks in there too. So,
well, it's a lot of it's right place, right time. But your dad was blessed with a mind a lot of guys aren't blessed to have in the ring. So he kind of, just by studying his craft and everything, it's a little bit tough to study because there's a lot of thinking to it. And I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, but as I've got older, my respect for his promos are like I watched his stuff with The Undertaker the other day, and I thought, my goodness, had this thing played out longer, this angle, it could have went down as one of the darkest, craziest. And his stuff was savage. Good night.
Absolutely. I completely agree. His mind is like no other. And what I find impressive is that even at 68, he is so sharp, and they still call him One Take Jake because no matter, like when Dark Side of the Ring, for example, comes out to film, or he filmed his Legend series, or when he's on stage for his comedy show, some of the things that he comes up with and that he is able to just pick off the top of his brain really are so surprising to me still. I just don't know how he does it.
Well, how is Jake enjoying life right now? Because everything I see, I follow Cheryl, I follow him. Man, he's looking like he's smiling an awful lot nowadays.
Yeah, he's doing well. We actually live in the same household. And so my partner and I live here with Jake, and I've, kind of helped take care of some of the mundane tasks that none of us want to do, right?
Right.
In any house. And so he is able to travel. He was booked last year from May through December, every weekend. And that's what he wanted to do. And Cheryl goes out with him about, half the time she goes out. They make little miniature vacations out of it. They go to concerts. I mean, he's going to see his favorites, the Rolling Stones,
Oh my
he's going
gosh.
to,
I love the Stones and they're getting ready to go out right now. And I think,
I know.
I'm in Eastern Kentucky. So Cleveland, I think, is the closest place. And I would say you'll have to have pretty, pretty good chunk of change to afford a ticket. Now, Jake may get backstage with Mick Jagger and Keith Richards. So you never know. Hell, he may be on stage by the end of that night.
You have no idea, right? And Cheryl would be right up there with him because she loves the Stones as well. And they're looking at going in Atlanta. So they're really excited about it.
When I put this format together, I kind of just hit spots, but that's what I love about my situation. It's not kind of an interview, it's a conversation. So if we go jumping in between, but like I said, I was saving some of the Jake stuff for later on in the episode, but it's so good to see everything that's happened to him, man. And it's really a true case that if you can really pull yourself out of it. It may not be easy and it's day to day and you may slip and you may fall, but you can do it. I mean, you can do it.
If my dad can be sober for 10 years, which is what this year is, the anniversary of, him being 10 years sober, if he can do that for 10 years, it gives a lot of hope to a lot of people, including me.
Yeah.
It really does, about not just about addiction, but about changing your life in whatever manner you want to change it. And I think he's just a real inspiration for people. And that's who comes up to him at Comic-Cons and at shows and that type of thing, is people saying, I want you to really know that you were part of my family first growing up, because I watched you all the time. And I watched you with my grandpa or my grandma or whoever it is. And he loves hearing that. And then also just the, him being able to connect with fans on addiction issues, on those types of things are just, it's really empowering for him though, too. It helps him get to continue to stay on his path,
by him staying sober. And, we met him at Pikeville, Kentucky. He was at Comic-Con. I had a friend with me who's battled certain ideas. And, I talked to Jake. Well, I'll tell you the story in a minute. But when he walked up to him, he said, thank you, man, because you've helped me get through a lot of tough times seeing you, fight, claw, and beat this thing. And, Jake was like, man, I appreciate that. I'm glad I can be able to help you, be part of your walk with sobriety and stuff. But I went up to him and I was like, Jake, I got to ask you a question, dude. I said, was there a heat between Ric Flair and Rick Rude? And he had the oxygen mask on for a moment and he took it off and he said, if Rick Rude wanted to, he would have killed Ric Flair. And then Ricky Steamboat was right beside of him. And Ricky Steamboat's real proper. And he's like, he said, I don't know what happened. He said, but if Rick Rude had decided to take matters into his hands against Ric Flair, they'd still be picking him up. So they were just, talking to those guys about something like that, getting a little piece of backstage stuff's pretty cool.
It is, absolutely. That's been one of my most favorite parts about going out on the road with Jake and getting to travel with him. And you were asking earlier about how many of the matches and that type of thing I got to go to. But that was my favorite part, was just, well, one, going to WrestleMania consistently. Oh, yeah. Amazing as a kid. I mean, I got to see my dad look like a rock star for real.
Gosh. I mean, him and Alice Cooper, was you there for that one?
I was not there for that one. I wish I would have been there for that one.
I love Alice Cooper too.
Amazing. And I'm sure you've heard his story about he and Alice and how, well, maybe you haven't, but he said that he and Alice were coming down on that big crane, I guess it was, the stage, and that Alice just gripped hold of the bars that they had. And he grabbed Jake and Jake goes, "What's wrong?" And he goes, "Too much."
Having a
Because
panic attack.
right? He was like, the energy from the crowd. He
Yeah.
said, Alice said, normally this is my show
Yeah.
and I'm the one and I can handle it. But when it's yours, it just is a different story. So I just love that story.
And I'm a huge old school rock and roll guy. Like my heroes in music are Axl Rose, Scott Weiland, David Lee Roth, Billy Squire. I mean, even my character in professional wrestling, I draw influences from, rock star Mick Jagger, guys that move around on stage. I mean, if I had not been a pro wrestler, the world's lucky I could sing a little bit because I would have been touring the world right now as a rock and roll star. But in pro wrestling, in a weird way, I'm able to work a crowd. I'm able to feed off the energy of the crowd. People don't realize, I think I've heard Chris Jericho talk about it, the similarities between rock stars and professional wrestlers. I mean, it's very,
Yeah,
very close.
absolutely. I agree. And that adrenaline rush and learning how to live without it when you are not doing it anymore makes life more complicated if you're not careful. So it's hard.
Well, I mean, it's just, after a great, and you hear the legends talk about this, and you even feel it. Like if you have a great match and you leave the arena or the building or whatever, and you're like, man, that was good. The crowd loved it. When you get home, even if you're wore out, you can't shut down until 4 or 5 in the morning. It's weird. You gotta, which I'm sure you've heard your dad talk about that and all the others, but it's a real thing. I mean, it's almost like, I'm not, I've always been a drug-free guy, but I imagine that's probably about as close to a high as you can feel.
Oh, absolutely. I believe that you're correct, that a lot of them chase that adrenaline, just like some of our nation's veterans do as
Yeah.
well, because there's similarities there as well. It's
Mhm.
interesting to see that how the adrenaline of a situation and staying in it for so long or for so many decades will actually change your brain. And so learning how to do that differently is a complicated process.
Well, I'll tell you, Brandy, you have not only is your father one of the greatest pro wrestlers of all time, but your aunt is a women's pioneer wrestler, Robin, and your uncle, in my opinion, Sam Houston's one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time. The man can still go. I mean, I've been watching Sam Houston stuff as of recent. He looks good. So, did you ever think about it? Did you ever get the itch? Did you ever say maybe this is in the cards?
That's an interesting question. I have twin brothers, and they were more so the physique of Jake. So
Yeah.
I've got the physique of my mother. I'm just not. I'm just always kind of been a larger girl. I've always,
There's nothing wrong with that at all, sis. I promise you.
and it's one of those things. Like when you think about women's wrestling back then, though, they were gorgeous. I mean, I thought all of them, and my Aunt Robin is a beautiful woman,
She sure is. She's timeless. She is classy. She's timeless. I mean, I've seen her on Dark Side of the Ring, and I said, man, you can. I mean, I don't know if you can look at somebody and say, man, they look like a good human being. Robin looks like a good human being.
Absolutely. And, I'll tell you also, and she is a good human being, by the way. And Jake always said to us, don't do this. I know that some wrestling families, they keep it in the family.
Okay.
They really take pride in that. And Jake's thing to us was he didn't say it very often and he didn't make a big deal out of it.
Mm-hmm.
But what he would say is if you want to have your control of your own schedule, if you want to be able to manage your day in a controlled way, if you want to have kids that you spend time with, I can't recommend this business. And that may have been far more so or the same years ago. I mean, I see the guys today, like, for example, on AEW, and they're working Wednesday, Friday, sometimes a Saturday. I can't, it's a lot.
It is.
So I'm grateful that they gave me, or that Dad gave me a heads up and said, just think about this, if you are considering it at all.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I mean, that's just, he knows as good as anybody what the pros and cons of the business are. So, that's basically him just laying it out for you all. And that's perfect advice. I mean, like I couldn't imagine, I've got an 8 to 4 job. So after I get off it, I work kids out in my home gym, usually 3 hours, and then I'll do a podcast 2 nights a week. So I stay busy with that. I couldn't imagine dedicating myself to wrestling and town to town, night to night. I mean, you get up in the morning, you hit the gym. I mean, you've got so much to do. I mean, it is a wild schedule.
well, it is a full-time job just to keep your body up the way these guys do. And not only that, but back in the day, it was tanning,
Mm-hmm.
it was the haircuts, it was the clothing, it was all of it. So,
But that's what made it great too. I mean, that's that style, that fashion of the 80s and 90s. I miss it. I mean, I do.
oh, absolutely. They all had full-blown characters, and I really enjoyed that about them.
Now, besides your father, who were some of your favorite wrestlers?
Oh, I loved the Rock and Roll Express.
Hey, I just worked a match. Well, we talked about that.
Yeah.
And I told him, I was like, I'm getting ready. We were backstage and stuff. And I told him, I was like, you know what, man? I said, I'm about ready to have Jake Roberts' daughter on my podcast. And I said, I think she's one of your biggest fans. He said, oh, really? And I was like, yeah. And he said, well, tell her I said hi. I sure will.
That's awesome. That's fabulous. I remember seeing them at one of the WrestleManias that I went to, and I was just in awe. And then I loved the people that Dad struggled with the most. It's funny that way. So I loved Undertaker. I thought his character was really, very developed,
Mm-hmm.
and just I really enjoyed watching him on the screen. I loved the Ultimate Warrior.
Yeah.
I mean, I really enjoyed those types of guys. And then I loved Powers of Pain.
Oh, yeah. Haku and Ming.
Yes.
Yeah. They were Warlord. Was it?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. I get the Faces of Fear and the Powers of Pain kind of a little confused there. Yeah, it was Barbarian and Warlord, right?
Yes.
Okay.
And see, I was in the Philippines with them. And so that really, the Barbarian kind of took me under his wing. And because Jake was at the time, doing his thing a little bit. And so I didn't necessarily, I wanted to be young and out. And
Yeah.
he wasn't necessarily young and out, he was back at the hotel. So, and Barbarian would, and he and Cowboy Bill, Bob Orton,
Yeah.
took me under their wing and made sure I got home every night. I was well taken care of, that nobody took advantage of me. And they were just really good, solid men,
That's
like you were
killer.
saying.
Yeah, that's killer to hear because Barbarian is legitimately one of the toughest dudes. I mean, him and Ming or Haku are two of the toughest human beings to, I mean, draw a breath of air. The stories they've got. So if you had him taken care of, I guarantee nobody was going to cause any issues.
No, he had tree trunks for legs. I mean, I remember thinking that he has tree trunks. And I watched him one night pick up a car
God.
because it was a taxi. A taxi had jerked him around, taken him back to the hotel, and he was having none of it. He got out of the car, he picked up the car. I don't even know how he fit in the car. It was so small, but he made it work. And that cab took off. And they were like, okay, so sorry.
I'd seen him recently at Chillicothe at Bobby Fulton's convention wrestling show, and I gave him some of the Bose Tractor Works. We had went around because it's the best CBD cream ever. And if we could get Jake some out, if we would like. I mean, it is so good, and the guy that makes it's locally owned, or excuse me, local. And this stuff helps on around my elbows, my shoulders. It takes work immediately, and it's just everything natural from the earth. And Bo was kind of like, man, if these guys had this back in the 80s and the 90s, they wouldn't have never had to take pain medication. And that's kind of
Absolutely.
that's kind of where he is, and I support it 100% because I just don't jump on board with anything. It has to work for me. And I had an issue with my elbow, and I went to my nurse practitioner, my friend. I'm like, you got to do something. I got a wrestling match this weekend. So she gave me a cortisone shot and a pain shot. And I showed up at a show, and my elbow was still hurting. And it just happened that they were here with this. And he was like, try this. And I was like, well, I don't want to fail a drug test or nothing. And he's like, no, you're not going to fail a drug test for a topical cream. And I was like, okay. So he gave me the one with no THC in it, and I put it on, and it immediately worked. And like my mind, it was like a magician had done something. I'm like, dude, what is this? He said, it's working. And I was like, yeah. I mean, I had a cortisone shot and everything. And he's like, I'm telling you, he said, take this back to the dressing room with some of the older wrestlers and let them try this and tell them to come talk to me. And we've been really close friends ever since. And we went up to Chillicothe, and we give a jar to every wrestler, like Larry Zbyszko, Gangrel even, man, he loved it. Rikishi, Tully, Magnum, TA, these guys loved it. Mark Henry. So, I mean, and they were like, if we'd had this back in the day, we'd fared a lot better.
Well, and I believe in CBD completely. I mean, I believe in the powers of it. I know how it can be effective. Being somebody with MS, I require that type of stuff for, like you're talking about, the residual pain of something. I tend to kind of topple a little bit. My feet aren't real great underneath me, and so anything that can help with that soreness afterwards. And I know that you have to have high quality CBD though.
Yeah.
You can't just choose any product. So I'm glad that you've got a great product, and I'm sure Jake would be interested.
Well, I'll tell you what, it's to the point to where like locally guys, like I sell it out of my home gym for them too, but locally guys are going to the doctor here that's got like bad backs. And one of them was my cousin, and he sent me a message, and he's like not technologically sound at all. And he sent me a message, and he's like, Adam, where's that? Do you got any more of that stuff? And I'm like, yeah, I'm stocked up with it. He said, I went to the doctor and told the doctor the other day, he asked me how I was getting around so good. And he said, I told him it was that stuff Adam Newsom was selling. And he's like, what do you mean what Adam Newsom was selling? He said, it's like a CBD cream. He said, I ain't had this relief from my back in years. And he's like, well, if it's working, keep doing it, because it's better on you than it is, taking even me. Because I was taking Motrin 800s when I'd get home from work just to be able to come down here, get my workout in, work everybody else out. So now I just go down, put this on where I need it, and I'm good. I mean, it's mind blowing.
And you're not affecting your kidneys.
No.
With the ibuprofen 800, it will. So that's amazing.
Because my wife would get on to me. She'd say, Adam, your liver has to be shot. And I'm like, honestly, Lindsay, I'm not done. If I have a terrible headache, I may take one now, maybe two, not even 800. But this stuff right here, even if you put it on your forehead and go around your temple and around your back, it takes away my headache. I mean, I'm just blown away by it, to be honest. And I'll talk to you off camera, and we'll get your address, and I'll ship you some of this out.
That'd be amazing. Thanks.
You are so welcome. And listen, what's a specific moment from your dad's career that stands out most to you? Not to get off on CBD at the moment, but
no, that's okay. I'm trying to think about one of the largest. Well, I mean, clearly watching him wrestle in general was always a really big treat. I mean, it was something that was scary and was just amazing to watch. So probably my favorite feud would have been with Taker, because it was amazing.
There was so much left for that too. And even when Jake came to WCW and wrestled Sting, I loved a lot of people, they don't like that era. I did. I thought WCW was good, but the visual of the Cobra biting Jake's neck, I thought that was haunting as a kid. I mean, that was freaky. I mean, as a kid, how does that happen without this man dying? You know what I mean? And it's just,
absolutely.
That was one of my favorite moments. I loved when when the snake bit Macho Man too. And there's a image that sticks out in my head where Jake's on his knees and he's smiling at the Cobra, and it's kind of looking at him. And I'm like, that is psychology. That's genius for him to know that snake's up looking, and he can kind of give it a look. My goodness.
Oh, absolutely. And the absolute connection that he had with the snakes that he worked with most of the time. I mean, he'd have a bad one here or there, but he absolutely tortured us with that cobra and his pythons. You couldn't be afraid of snakes in our household, even though he's afraid of snakes.
Yeah, I can remember him saying that.
Yeah, you weren't allowed to be, because I remember my first apartment with a girlfriend of mine, and she was in the shower, and Jake just tossed that bad boy and I'm talking about the cobra,
Yeah.
you
Oh
know,
gosh,
into the bathroom, and
that would
he
have been a
would
heart attack
torture
for
you
me.
by putting it on the back of the toilet. Like, so he'd sit that little pillowcase there, and you'd sit down in the middle of the night to go to the bathroom, and you just hear, and it would be like, oh my God. You'd hear him cackling from the other room.
That would be a hard. There would be a lot of there'd be a lot of corpses here if I'd had that try that, because everybody would have had heart attacks in this house.
That's funny.
I'll tell you what. I mean, it's been a tough road for Jake. I mean, he's went toe to toe with the demons, and he has slapped the DDT on them, and he's kept them at bay for 10 years now, almost, right?
Yes, 10 years.
What would you say that you are most proud of him for?
Oh, I'm absolutely most proud of how he is as a grandfather. That's what's most important to me, that he missed out on a lot with his kids, and he knows that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Jake has 8 children,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be hard to keep up with 8 children, that would be impossible anyway. But, and from several mothers, so, from Cheryl and also from my mom. And so it really, to see him want to go on family vacations, and to see him put the effort into being a good grandfather who's thoughtful, who pays attention, who wants to know what they're doing and what their experiences are in life. That's what I'm most proud of him for.
That is beautiful. That is awesome, man. I mean, honestly, I could imagine. Like, I don't feel it, on the level you do, but I can imagine how good that feels to be through everything you guys have went through all your life, and the the being down, the getting up, the falling down again, to finally seeing almost like it level out, and this man, this legend, just being thankful that he's got his family and checking in on them, and being just overwhelmed with the family, because he comes from the wrestling family. So I mean, he's a family man at heart, I would imagine.
Yes, absolutely, he is. And he, I was talking to my brothers the other day, and I told you they were twins,
Yeah.
right? And so I was talking to them about him being a grandfather and what that looks like. And my brothers both said, my kids have more memories with him than we ever thought possible. We didn't even know if our kids would meet him.
Wow.
Because
that's heavy stuff, man.
it is.
That's some heavy stuff. I mean, that's just, and I was going to ask you again, what is your thoughts on Diamond Dallas Page?
So Diamond Dallas Page, of course, I have a big heart for him.
Yeah.
Because he really was amazing to Jake, took very good care of him, helped pick him up when none of the rest of us could really seem to make an impact. Because I don't want people to think that, DDP was the only person who tried.
Right.
There were a lot of people in Jake's life, to include his ex-wives,
mm-hmm.
That really wanted to help him be better and do better. But Dallas really just knew how to help Jake best. And they could speak brother to brother.
Yeah.
And he didn't let Jake get away with any crap. No, you're not going to leave just because you relapsed. Yeah. You're going to stay because you want to go run from this, and you're not going to. You're going to get up tomorrow morning and you're going to start over. And only Dallas, I think DDP was really the only person that could have said it in that way, made that level of impact. And Jake lived with him for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
This was not a short, I know the movie makes it look like a much shorter time period. The resurrection when they were filming the resurrection of Jake the Snake, I went and stayed at Dallas's house for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And it was one of the best experiences for my health overall. I mean, it just really was impressive. And Dallas cares deeply about his fellow man,
Yeah.
whether through yoga or eating healthy or whatever it might be. So I'm always grateful for Dallas.
I think it was Kevin Nash who said it, or maybe Scott Hall. I can't remember, but one of them said how most guys chase a high from drugs. Dallas chases it in helping people. That's how he gets his fix, is he likes to help people. Like, and I know that feeling. Like, I know how good it feels to see a kid hit a new bench press, or I know how good it feels to see a man say, "Man, I've lost 10 pounds here in the last few."
Right.
I feel like, I've had a hand in on helping this, so I can imagine that how DDP feels on that.
Absolutely, especially now when Jake's been sober 10 years, has reconnected with Cheryl, and is being a grandfather. I mean, that's really paying it forward in a real solid way. And I was going to say, I bet you get that from working with the kids you work with.
It's went from, I started out with the kids around COVID. I had a little home gym, and after COVID, I started working them out. Well, it started growing and growing and growing. And then I was having, adults who were wanting to lose weight come. Then I had adults that was wanting to put muscle mass on. And now it's turned into basically, buddy, 5 days a week. When I get home from my shoot job, I'm down here in the garage. And then, 2 nights after that, usually I shoot my podcast at like 10 at night or 9 at night or something. But yeah, I stay busy, but I get that feeling, man, that I love to see people succeed, and I love to see. I'm a sucker for a comeback story, and that's just how I operate.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, Brandy, the boa constrictor, I have a few questions for you before we get off here. Just something so people can get to know you a little bit. Does that sound all right? Fast questions. What is your favorite type of music?
I just went and saw my favorite band. So my partner bought us tickets in Philadelphia to go see Tool.
Wow.
So heavy metal is my thing. I enjoy it. But on the same end, I enjoy Little Baby is literally one of my repeat albums, several of his albums. So, but Tool is for sure my favorite band. I've seen them in concert 7 times. I'm going with my brothers for the first time in Dallas, so I can't wait.
Well, that was my next question, which was your favorite artist, and you're a big fan of Maynard, it sounds like. So Tool was definitely.
Yes, Tool, and I love A Perfect Circle.
Yeah.
With one of his, other bands. I really enjoy Maynard. I love the way he doesn't sing at the front of the stage. He takes a back seat. They've got Danny Carey, the drummer, up front. And it just, to me, that's respect.
It is. And it separates them from your traditional on-stage performance also.
It does. And their lyrics, to me, are all about reconnecting with your fellow man.
Yeah.
With just that positive, and they've got plenty of negative, songs.
Everybody's got that, but there's some that, like you said, and I seen an interview, I think, with Maynard not too long ago, and it was hilarious. He was walking around this, I think he's got a wine vineyard or something out in California or something. He was walking around in a suit, and he was just talking about, these wild rock stars, living a, simple. It's crazy to see them living a simple, sane life.
Right. Being normal, everyday people. Sure.
All right. Now, what is your favorite movie?
My favorite movie, hands down, Pulp Fiction.
Oh, I love Pulp Fiction. I love Bruce Willis's character in that movie also.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It came out at the right time in my life.
Yeah.
And I had just moved to go to graduate school in Kansas, and I had 3 movies, and they were all Quentin Tarantino. And so
what were they?
So it was Pulp Fiction, 4 Rooms, and what was the third one? Oh, Reservoir Dogs.
Oh yeah, Reservoir Dogs. Chris Penn, Michael Madsen. Yeah, there were some good actors in that one also.
Yeah, they were on repeat in my house. So,
Who is your favorite actress and actor?
ooh, I would say, hmm, I might have to think about that one. I would say that one of my favorites is Mary Stuart Masterson. I really enjoy her work. And then for the actor, would probably be it might be Bruce Willis, which is kind of frightening. So
I love Bruce Willis, and my heart breaks for him right now too, man. And it just is it's a sad situation when you see your heroes like that, man, and just the dementia deal. My mother, or excuse me, my wife's grandpa had it. And it was so sad to see how that time went down, and I hate that for them. But don't want to end on a negative note. The last question is going to be, in your opinion, in your favorites. It ain't the best, just your favorites. Mount Rushmore of wrestlers. You got 4.
oh goodness, uh, Taker,
Great.
uh, Savage, Jake. He's got to be up there,
Got to be right in the center.
and Rick Rude.
Wow. That, my friend, is 4 that nobody can argue with. I mean, that is awesome. And I'll tell you what, Brandy, I've had a great time talking to you. I mean, you are you can tell you're a psychologist, very well spoken, beautiful woman. I mean, you've got it going on, sis, and you could have made it in wrestling. Don't think you couldn't have, because you could have.
Well, thank you for that. I've really enjoyed it too, and I hope you have a great day.
Well, you too. And you listen, we'll try to get the snake on here himself this spring if we can. Let him know how good this went also, by the way. That way he'll be more than thrilled to come on.
I will for sure, and I think this spring is very doable.
Well, I'll tell you what, Brandy, I appreciate you for just giving us a little bit of your time, and you be careful on down the road. Have fun at Tool, and take care.
You too. Thanks.